Welcome, everybody. I am Psychic Medium Jaime.
And Spiritwalker Nicole.
We are Shades of Spirit. We want to welcome a truly remarkable woman to our show today. In the course of Lorry's life, she has died and came back and had 2 subsequent near-death experiences. Her story of inspiration and empowerment is one to share with the world. Honestly, I mean, we were captivated by our interview with her yesterday. Lorry is a natural healer, and I can say that I have had that firsthand experience with her multiple times, and knows the reason she has seen the other side is to be able to help heal the souls that she comes into contact with her here on this side. So I don't even want to say anything else. Without further ado, let's welcome Lorry.
Yay! Lorry, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what you currently do?
So I am a licensed esthetician, and I'm a Reiki master healer, and I'm also a shamanic Reiki master healer. So that's currently my practice now, and just helping with, in general with anything. Usually I end up being like a counselor as well. So
Your intuition is so on point, though, that while you're, just doing the pre-talk with your clients, I've had several sessions with you, which have just been remarkable and different each time, because when we do this line of work, it is different each time. The sessions aren't the same. And the last time we did the shamanic Reiki, and it was just empowering beyond belief, like to the point where there's things I still haven't even told you about after the session, because it all evolves as time goes on. So within the week, I was able to really stand in my power and really work through a lot of that forgiveness aspect of it, which is so hard for a lot of us to release. But I remember our first session, when we were kind of talking and getting to know one another, this briefly came up about your near-death experiences. And we really didn't get into the fine details, but it kind of stuck with me. And that as time's gone on, clients that I've had that we've shared experiences with, I'm finding more and more people who've had near-death experiences or who have passed and then came back. And we really wanted to captivate that on Angelic Connections this month, because it's so interesting to hear from someone who has lived through that and can validate a lot of what we would think it would be like, and also to clarify things that, we asked 100 questions as well, because it was things that maybe we read in a book, but to actually hear it from someone is
genuine too.
Genuine, authentic. Yeah. So explain to everyone, share that experience at age 7. What happened at age 7 with you?
So at age 7, I ended up getting obviously very sick. I had pneumonia, and I had a heart condition. So I was throwing multiple heartbeats with a temperature of 105 plus. I don't physically remember being sick at that age. At that point, before I was hospitalized, I do remember being in an ice bath at one point, and then remembering I was in the hospital. I was not allowed to move at all. I had to be sponge bathed. I had a heart monitor hooked up to me, and the only thing I could do was lie absolutely still and watch my heartbeat on the monitor. And these were in the days, of course, when the nurses wore their hats and they wore their little gowns, their white gowns or aprons or whatever you wanted to call them. But I remember I didn't really feel anything. I was just laying there, and I knew I was sick, obviously. And all I could do was watch my heartbeat on the monitor. And one day that my heartbeat was just slowing, and I remember it slowing, but I don't remember feeling anything physically. And then flatline, and then the beat. And from there, I went above my bed, and I was looking down at my body, and multiple doctors came rushing over to my bed and started working on me. And at that point, I went to a different place, a beautiful, beautiful, um, the way I described it before is like a white cloud, but it's not so much like a white cloud. It's almost just the most peaceful, beautiful environment you can imagine. And it's just like white. It's white and it's pure and it's safe and just so beautiful. And this no pain. I just remember feeling so, so good. The best I think I've ever felt, really. The best I've ever felt. And in the distance, I had a little doll that one of the nurses had given me, and I was holding the doll, and in the distance was I don't I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but it was um, I'm going to say him. I'm going to refer to him as him, but he was in a almost like a cloak robe, but I couldn't see his face, and he was holding out his arms like this, holding them out towards me, basically welcoming me and telling me to come into his arms. And I was just walking. I wasn't afraid. There was no fear. There was nothing. And I was just walking towards him. And something stopped me. And I turned around. It had to be, I heard my parents crying. And I turned around and looked back. And I remember turning and looking back forward towards him. And at that point, he did this motion, one arm up, one arm down. And I knew for whatever reason that meant I needed to make a choice. Either I stay or I can go back. And I looked back again and I looked at him and I just knew I had to go back. And when I woke up in the hospital room, my parents were sobbing at the foot of my bed. And yeah, still no pain. No, there was no pain whatsoever. It was a beautiful experience. It's so amazing because I remember it so clearly. Every detail, I remember it so clearly, and just the peace that was with it was so beautiful. Um, so obviously, for whatever reason, I chose to come back, and I don't know why. Well, I kind of do know why. So, as
I,
time,
I I can say I know why.
right, right, as time has shown me, I do know why. So
Yep.
So your doctor said that how long you were pronounced, well, not pronounced, but you were clinically dead. Is that correct?
yes,
For
for
about
about that's what I see. And my parents don't like to talk about it. My father has passed since, but my mom, they never really talked about it. And when I try to talk about it with them, they just can't. My mom cannot talk about it.
so there for about a minute. But when you were up there, did you have any sense of that time or like how long you were above your
No,
body? Nothing, there was no
no.
time.
There was no sense of time. It was just, it was the most beautiful place. No time. I have no idea how long it really was. I know when I did come back, I know I was in and out for a long time. When I woke up and I saw my parents at the foot of my bed sobbing, and then I would fade back out and come back in. But my heart was still beating at that point.
Right.
So, yeah.
You talked about when you were up there, there was an absence of fear and pain. Now, prior to that, had you been, when you were little, were you like at that age, were you prone to being fearless of things, or were you sort of scared, or how would you
Mm,
characterize yourself prior to that?
I knew fear very well. I knew fear very well. I grew up with very strict parents. So I was always the sensitive child. Um, like I would cry at a heartbeat, very sensitive. So I knew fear. I would be afraid of many things, always, which, is, I don't know if that's typical to that extent, but yeah, I did. But I had no fear, no pain. And ironic to that was I would always dream, and I can't remember if I was dreaming this before or after, maybe a little bit of both. But my dreams, I could fly. I would fly, and I would be flying with angels. I would always be flying with angels, and I would be around my house. I would be flying with angels around my house. You know,
Now, did you grow up in a religious household, or how did you know about the angels at that young age?
I remember at a young age going to the Catholic Church, and I was brought up Catholic. So going to the Catholic Church with my grandma, where she would wear the little doily on her head, and, she would put it on me. And so I grew up going through that. And then something happened at a certain point, and I was still young. And it was probably, I think, before 7 that something happened with my mom at the church. And for whatever reason, she pulled us away from the church. And she does not talk about that to this day. So I don't know what it was, but I did grow up. My grandma was extremely Catholic. My mom was Catholic. My dad was Catholic. And, and it wasn't like to the extent where you say prayers every time before you ate dinner. It wasn't to that extent. It was just going to Sunday church. But yeah.
Now, it was interesting because you said you were given a choice when you were up there. And from your experience, obviously, you speak on behalf of yourself, just like we speak on behalf of what we know. They're all from our experiences. Do you feel that everyone has that option of choice?
No, absolutely not. No, there are chosen people. I've talked to many people who have gone through experiences. I've done some research in it myself. I've read some books. Um, Ironically, they're all very similar, but um, from what I know intuitively, gut feeling is no, not everybody has that choice.
It's so interesting. And, I've been reading books as well, just to get ready for today, but it's just something that continues to just nag at me. Like I need to understand more. And most of the stories in the book I've read so far talk about seeing the tunnel. And I
Right.
found when we talked to you, you never said anything about it was dark and then you were able to see the tunnel and the light coming through. You just was there. You were just there.
Right. I never had no darkness, no, and probably because they knew it would scare me.
Yeah. And another
Because I
thing,
was
oh,
fearful.
so you talk about this cloaked figure, and a lot of the people that we've read about, and even some that we've talked to, they say that as soon as they, I don't want, I guess, leave their body, if you will, they see, family members, or they see angels. Who do you think this cloaked figure was?
To me, I think it was the highest power. And the reason being is because when I had my near death experience following this, I didn't see him, but I felt him. I felt that same empowerment.
Did you
So
feel that through both of your near-death experiences? Maybe this was that part of just that connection with you and being
no,
connected with him. Got it.
the the last near death experience, I didn't get to that point, but I knew that if they didn't get the medication in me, I was going to die. to reverse what had been done to me on the last near-death experience.
So let's talk about those for a minute. You've had one where you actually were clinically,
Yes.
passed for a minute, and then following, and obviously, you're not 110. You're young, you're vibrant at this age. Like, what happened from 7 until you said about 10 years ago, 2 more near-death experiences? How, to me, does that happen to one person in the course of such a short span of their life? But let's tell our viewers a little bit about each one of those and just how, because what it is, it's a layer for you, layers upon layers of experiences for you and that connection for you to bring you to where you're at today.
Yeah. So, the one other thing that I haven't told you was that after this incident, I was always, and this is not, I don't think this is typical for a young child, but I was so content being alone. I would love to be alone in my room, door closed, in my own quiet world. Just I want it in that peaceful, anything that I could do to bring that peace that I experienced to have it come back. But I went through that, and then moving on through the years, I ended up, when I was in college, I ended up having severe abdominal pains, and I had complained for 6 months. Every time I ate, my stomach would distend like I was 6 months pregnant. And I was studying to be a doctor, and none of the doctors would listen to me. I would go to the doctor, I would see a OBGYN. He would turf me to a gastroenterologist, and they would turf me back and forth because nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. They got to the point where they insisted it was gastro related, and it ended up being I ended up getting very sick, throwing up. But let me back up a little bit, because before this, he had ordered, like a week or two before, KUB, upright x-rays, colonoscopy. All my tests ended up negative, which is crazy for what I had. Ended up negative. I ended up throwing up in the middle of the night, and I couldn't stand up straight. I was literally bent over like this, could not stand up straight. I went and woke my mom up at like 2 in the morning. She took me to the emergency room. There, I was just throwing up buckets. And the doctor said I had food poisoning in the ER, and he sent me home. And I remember arguing with him, saying, this isn't food poisoning, this is something else. And he's like, no, this is food poisoning. Sent me home. And then I just remember rolling on the bed. I was so uncomfortable and so much intense pain. And I went to the bathroom, and I threw up again. And this time I threw up blood. And I went and got my mom. She called the gastroenterologist at that point, and it was very early in the morning, but they were there. And she said, I am bringing my daughter in now. And she took me in, and I was in so much pain, I couldn't sit down. And I had to go to the bathroom. And I walked in my little angle to their bathroom, and I passed out in their bathroom. So they had to come get me with the wheelchair, took me in. He had no clue what was wrong with me. He admitted me for pain. And literally, it was a minute from his office to the front of the hospital. And by the time I got to the hospital doors, I went into shock. And next thing I know, I was waking up in a bed with a bunch of doctors around me trying to figure out what was wrong. What is wrong with this girl? They thought it was typical med school syndrome. You're complaining of colon pains. You're studying the colon in college. That's what they think this is. And so they had no choice, because my vitals were dropping, and they were dropping quickly. So they said, we're going to have to do exploratory surgery. And they took me in, and they ended up cutting me all the way down my abdominal wall. And I remember waking up on the table in surgery. And I remember the doctor saying, one of them saying, she's up, she's up, she's up. And I could see all my insides were out of my body. And then when I came to back in my room, I was told I had a gangrene colon and they had to take 18 inches of my colon and I would have been dead in 24 hours.
That just baffles me. Like that just gangrene, you know, all the tests they ran, all the tests they ran and couldn't find it. And yet you were supposed to go through this process again. 24 hours would have taken your life, and yet you were still able to connect again with that higher power at
Right.
B. And
Yeah.
then, from there, did you get a break? Maybe a short break, and then all of a sudden you're back at it again. Like the way that you would get not beat down, but it would just bring you down. And then I think about the healing process, everyone, and that introspection time. Like if you wanted that alone, peaceful time, you had a lot of healing time to do that. But
Right.
then have it happen one more time,
Right.
something different again. And with this part, we'll tell the story and we'll take a quick break. But I think the favorite part for Spiritwalker Nicole here was the rattlesnake part. So please don't leave that part out because
Okay.
that was pretty funny. But this is now your third near-death experience.
Right. So what happened, the third time I had ended up getting sick for years and nobody knew what it was. They thought maybe lupus, some type of autoimmune runs in the family. They're trying to figure it all out. Nobody could figure it out. But one of my doctors decided, you know what? We're going to do IVIG, which is an immunoglobulin treatment, very similar. It's kind of, I compare it to like the form of chemo because it's kind of similar the way that they do it. So a nurse basically comes to your house once a month for 3 to 4 days consecutively, and they hook you up to this IV for about 8 hours a day. And they take your vitals every 15 minutes throughout the whole day through the process, and they stay with you the entire time. So he decides this is what I need. This is something is seriously wrong with her. She can't make up these stories. There's a reason why she's feeling this bad and they can't figure it out. And so, anyways, I start the first treatment and I always remind doctors I'm super sensitive. I'm ultra sensitive. Please, what a normal patient would need, say for an aspirin, a patient would take one aspirin. I only need a quarter of that aspirin because I'm that sensitive. So I always tell them I'm sensitive. Please be careful. And typically it's like, yeah, sure, you know. So, anyways, he decides he's going to start me on the IVIG. We get set up. Nurse comes out to the house the first time. She administers the IV. I do okay through the first day. Second day, starting not to feel so good. Third day, did not feel good. Fourth day, it was worse. And I remember I made it through that course and I went to see the doctor afterwards and I said, can you please cut down the dosage? It's like I knew that this was killing me. And he said, no. He said, you need this. You have to have this. You need this. I can't cut down. And you're on the bare minimum dosage as is. So I said, okay. And the next month, the nurse came out. She administered the first IV. And I do remember my vitals plummeting that first day. And to the point where she stopped the IV, she had to call and he said, push through, push through. And I got through the first day and I was so sick that night. I couldn't get out of bed. And I remember telling my husband, I don't think I can do this. I think this is killing me. And went to bed. The next morning, my husband gets up, goes to work very early in the morning. And my kids were, thank God, old enough to function and do everything they needed to do to get ready for school. But I remember that morning, I was basically in and out of consciousness, in and out. And to the point where I couldn't even really pick up the phone and call for help. And I remember my husband, he came home that morning to check on me, and I was in bed and I was incoherent. And I remember him carrying me to the car and rushing me to the hospital. And they knew that they had to get an IV in me like right away to reverse everything that happened, or it could have been fatal.
And that's number 3. That is
Yes.
crazy. So when we come back, I want you to tell the snake story because that's going to put us right
Yeah.
into, it's okay, because it will actually take us right back into the next couple of questions that we have for you. How can people get a hold of you or find you for all of the awesome healing work that you do and the esthetician stuff that they do? How can they get a hold of you?
They can email me. My email is lorrycrow@gmail, and Lori is not spelled the typical. It's LORRYCROWE@gmail.com, of course. So
Perfect. Perfect. Or if you guys are just, you want to reach out, you find a connection with Lori, absolutely do that. We'll put her information up again as well. Guys, stay tuned. We've got more exciting stories from Lori Crow about her near death experiences coming up after this break. Welcome back, everybody. Sometimes I want the music to continue because when Spiritwalker Nicole starts to dance, we got to flow with it. I don't know what to say. It's just about releasing that energy here. We are super excited to have such a fabulous woman here, Lori Crow, talking to us today about her near-death experiences. Now, for someone who's had 3 near-death experiences in her life, it is something to pay attention to because there are reasons why all these things happen. There are no coincidences. I do want to touch on real quick. We do have someone, Leah Renee says, man, this sounds like she's describing my life with stomach paralysis, always having perfect tests, etc. She's with you on the meds too. Like she can, one Benadryl, man, and she's out for a day or two. I love how your story can touch someone else who's been going through maybe not the exact same things, but similar things. And Leah, absolutely reach out. It doesn't matter where you're at either, because you can do your work remotely and distance as well.
yes,
And I've had it both in person with Lori and distance, and they're both just as powerful. So I would definitely say, reach out to her and let her see what she can see within you. Maybe do some energy work. You're obviously having tests and stuff run, so we always say go see your medical professional first, because that's not what we are. But her intuition is so on point that she's actually been able to save lives through these gifts that she's been giving. So we'll get to that in a couple minutes.
I also just want to say what I like about Lori's this tiny little thing, big energy, tiny frame. But I like how no matter what she's going through, and it sounds like her mom and husband do the same thing. Is like when the doctors say no, this is what it is. She stands up and say no, something's wrong. Like you need to listen to me. And I really like that because I feel like sometimes people don't. They just okay, you're the doctor or whatever, and just roll with it. And who knows? I mean, I'm not knocking the medical profession by any means, but I am a huge advocate of standing up and saying, listen to me. This is happening to me. And that's just what
Exactly.
I wanted to say.
Okay, so we got to hear the rattlesnake story. To finish off, you just not being able to move and just back at the doctor, they're flushing your system out. You're home now, recovering from that. Then this wild story happens, and it's crazy. So talk about the rattlesnake.
okay. So after this last session, I'm back from the hospital. I'm still very weak, very sick. We had a big backyard at that time, and I walked back. Something told me, you're going to see a snake. You're going to see a snake. And I walked all the way back to I had a planted area in the very back of the yard, and I'm in my slippers and I'm doing the shuffle because I'm so sick still. And I walked to the back, and then I start walking back towards the house. And I thought, wow, I heard that voice saying, you're going to see a snake, just be careful. And as soon as I get by the house, I look down and there is a baby rattlesnake. And keep in mind, I've always had that fear base my whole life. I've always been afraid of almost everything. And I got down and I looked and I'm like, I was close. I was literally inches from the rattlesnake, which typically I would be running the other way within feet of something like that. And I thought, wow, okay. So I said, I'm going to catch the snake. And I went and got a trash can and I got a scooper. And I got my phone and I was taking pictures of the snake because I knew nobody in my family would believe me that I caught a baby rattlesnake. So I took all these pictures and then I scooped up the baby rattlesnake and just put it into the trash can. And it was a little trash can. And I took more pictures, but I thought, this is so strange because I had no fear, no fear. And I noticed after that, I would have no fear of anything. We went zip lining and it was through these trees in Montana, crazy up high, nothing. No adrenaline rush, no fear, um, near accidents, no fear. It was the strangest thing for me. But after this incident, I had lost the ability to have fear.
That is amazing,
And wait, for all our animal activists out there, you did let the rattlesnake go, correct? After you were done
Yes.
taking selfies? Okay.
Can you
Jamie,
just imagine? Wait, I am like just came off of death's bed one more time. Let me get out my camera. I get it though. No one would believe you. They're like, "Oh, she's been hallucinating. It's the
no,
medicine work." Yeah, I love it. So I love that you were also, capturing these moments to be able to
they
prove to people.
were so mad at me. They were so they're like, why are you that close? You're way too close to that. What are you doing? I'm like, I just caught the snake. Straight.
It's
Why
every
wouldn't
day.
you?
No problem. Okay,
That was
Lori. So with these three experiences, right? One is to think you now have a deeper connection with spirit, the angels, God, source, however you refer to that higher power it be. What we found validating for us actually talking after kind of, our pre-interview yesterday was that a lot of this does resonate with us and how your story of how you work with spirit and the angels that are on your team and the way that you connect with them and the way that you just let it flow so naturally. So I know, Nicole has a question about that process of just connecting with your spirit team and the angels as well.
Yeah, because knowing you and hearing you talk yesterday about it, you just it seems as natural as like, oh yeah, I had a drink of water today or I ate food. It's you'll talk about your guides and angels, and especially when you're doing that shamanic Reiki or any kind of healing work, you bring them in. But what you didn't say was like specific. And I work so often when I do readings, people want specifics. They want to know the name of their spirit guides, the names of their angels. I want to call in this one for this and this one for that. And it seems like you don't really have that need. You have a very close bond with them, but it doesn't seem like you have the need to individualize them as much as I've experienced with other people.
right. I don't. I don't. I'm just grateful that I've been given this gift, or I've made myself more aware that I've been able to silence myself enough to connect. I don't feel the need for names. If I need their help, generally I will call on them, but they're always with you. They're always there with you, to remind me of things. Like I say, if I'm driving on a road, don't go that way, go that way. And you need to listen. You need to listen to that gut instinct being brought out to you. But everybody has that ability, and I know people they'll get that sense, they'll hear the voice, and they need to recognize within their time that there's something to be said about this, and that's somebody protecting them, guiding them, um, And it's proven over and over again in my life with many circumstances, that they're always trying to guide you on the right path or protect you or to help you connect, which I truly believe everybody has the power. It's just a matter of balance, silencing, and opening your heart to the possibilities that are there.
And trusting that when you're hearing those voices and you're following them, allow the validation to come in. Because
Right.
when we have that validation follow it, it just solidifies what's going on. Now, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a daughter, you're a woman entrepreneur, you're running your own business. You also work with other, professionals in the field as well. But when it comes down to, I think one of the biggest challenges, it may not even be the near death experiences. It's about being on the same page with your spouse or with the person that you share your life with. And so it's kind of funny because we said, when was the turning point for him to realize, like, oh, maybe I should turn left and not right? I mean, that's also the human side. We've been talking about all the angelic parts of it and this connecting with spirit. But when you're actually listening to your guides, when did he finally turn to you and say, okay, I'm turning right today? And is now, he fully supports exactly what you do and what you've been through, and it's just a beautiful match for the two of you. But I guess my question is, how do you work with the human side along with the spirit side and move through your day-to-day life like that? Because a lot of us are battling that.
Right. So basically, in looking back, everything I went through taught me a lesson. They all taught me different lessons. And that's why things happen, regardless if they're good or bad in our lives. They're there to teach us something. We need to learn something from them. Uh, with my husband, it just started with stories that I would say, this is going to happen. And he would be like, yeah, sure, right, and then it would happen. And then he would say, oh, it's just a coincidence, whatever. And then I would meet somebody and I would say, mark my words, something bad is going to go down with that person. They're not balanced. Something bad is going to happen. And 3 months down the road, they're arrested for horrible things. And he would be like, kind of scratch his head. And then, it just continued. It was story after story after story. And then one of his friends, we had met one of his coworkers and his wife, and just casual dinner with a bunch of people. And like 3 months, 2 months later, the wife ends up calling at night. I think it was like a Saturday, Sunday night. And she asked my husband, hey, can I talk to Lorry? And he's like, sure. So she said, I'm in the hospital with my husband and something is wrong with him and we don't know what it is. And I said, well, can you give me the symptoms? He was in the emergency room. And so she told me, and I said, he has spinal meningitis. And I said, he needs to have a spinal tap right now. And I said, just tell the doctor he needs a spinal tap and they will have the results. And I just knew it. And this has happened in so many situations where I just knew what that diagnosis was. So she ended up calling me back later, probably like 45 minutes later, and she was sobbing. And she said, the doctor refuses to do a spinal tap. He said, it's just a virus. They're going to send him home. And I said, absolutely not. You tell him this is your insurance. This is your husband's life, that you are not leaving the hospital until he does a spinal tap. And he ended up doing the spinal tap. And about an hour later, she called me and she said, you were right. He has spinal meningitis. And he was admitted. And the doctor was like, who's your doctor? Who told, and she's like, she's not a doctor. just, yeah. So basically saved his life, it could have gotten pretty bad.
And
So,
for those of you listeners, Lori does not have a pterodactyl in the room with her. That is her snoring dog.
oh, I'm sorry, you can hear
No,
him.
it sounds like you're moving furniture. And I'm like, wow, she's also got mind powers, folks. No, he's fine. He's an old guy. He's hanging out with mom for the interview today. That's fine. I love it, though. I love it. So this kind of actually feeds into, you got the validation. Now, your husband's like, okay, so we're definitely going to listen to her more often here. But it feeds into our body and how our body stores energy. And she even like grabbed the notebook out of my hand yesterday while we were talking to you and wrote this in capital letters because this stuck with you.
Yeah. So you said I forget which part of the story you were saying, but you said the phrase the body will keep the score. And I love
Absolutely.
that.
It
And
does.
so yeah, can you expand on that a little bit?
There is actually a book on that. Everything that we feel, the trauma, and this goes to a whole other level. And I've experienced this with many of my clientele.
It was the
That
empath. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but we were talking about how strong of an empath you were and taking all those energies on. And it was right before we hit the third near death experience. And that's when you said the body keeps score because you were not only taking your own energy in, but everyone else's. And there's so many empaths out there that I wanted to make that part because all of a sudden they were like, she needs to talk about how this affects us also on the outside with people's energies coming in, especially in the times that we're in right now of what's going on in the world.
right. You have, yeah, right. Especially right now, it's crazy. You have to learn how to ground yourself significantly because I know, like other empaths, all you people out there, I know when you go out in a public place, you pick up energies and it's very uncomfortable. You get this, you get that, you got things coming from every direction and you feel it. I mean, you feel people's pain and you feel it generally wherever they have it. Or some people just feel it in the core of their chest. And I know if you don't find a way to release that or ground yourself properly, it will ruin your body. It will destroy your body, your adrenals. It will play havoc on your body. And then you end up having ailments from the other energies.
That's what really intrigued me to start Reiki for myself, to
Right.
learn about Reiki, was that I was being called, like you'd said, you were just all of a sudden like, yeah, being called to this modality. Like, I want to learn more about it. And once I feel like it's like one of those things where, like, for those of us that have tattoos, like you get the first tattoo and you're like, okay, when do I get my next one? It's this like high that we get on because we're working with energy. And you talked about how easy it flows through you and how we already know it's going through us. And when I teach the Reiki students that we already have that, they already feel it, but how to channel it, how to connect in order to do so, how to see into those areas of life. And being able to do that can help people work through that energy. But time and time again, I'm finding, just the past 6 months, people are holding the neighbor's energy over here. And then they'll go to the grocery store and they're picking up on this person's energy. And they're wondering why they're so depleted by the end of the day. And they're like, but I didn't do much. And then I slept for 12 hours and I still feel mentally exhausted. So I love that you validate. The people hear us harp all the time about grounding, centering, shielding your energy, being in that space. But when they come to you, take us through, quickly the process so that when they want to make an appointment with you, the shamanic Reiki was just absolutely phenomenal.
Okay.
What's the difference? So if somebody comes to you for a session, how do you decide if it's Reiki or shamanic Reiki? Um, and then how do you work through that energy?
Again, it's something that is channeled to me as I'm working. Um, it may tell me to go into shamanic Reiki. Now, with some people, I have to be careful because shamanic Reiki can, it's more tones. I'm talking, I'm taking you on a journey. Um, there could be suction, spitting. And that can disturb some people. So I need to know if they're open to that at first, and then if they are, then I go to wherever my guides are telling me to go, whatever I need to do, wherever I'm being called. If I need to bring shamanic in, I'll bring shamanic in. Yeah. I
I
forgot
love
to
it.
tell
I
you.
love that we
I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you about one. This is crazy, but this is going back. But this is one of my other ladies. She had terminal cancer, and she was passing, and I knew it was her my last time doing Reiki on her, and I just knew it. And I had another Reiki. Her friend was also a Reiki master that was in with me, and she would sit through in the back and watch. And I actually invited her up at one point to help me do Reiki with her. And I knew it was the last time I was going to see her. And when she left that day, she was in a wheelchair. Um, the pain in my chest was just, I mean, I was drained. It was so severe. And I walked out and I sat on the couch, and I remember telling my husband, I said, the the pain, this is the worst I've ever been through. And I sat there, and then a voice came and said, go look outside and go look at the sky. And I walked outside, and there was an angel cloud. So perfectly beautiful. I wish I would have went back through my pictures because I would show it to you. But yeah, you have to ground yourself. You have to learn how to ground yourself properly and to let things go. And sometimes shaking it off. Like I said, go around a bonfire and dance it out. Let it go. You have to shield what you're holding on to, those energies that you are helping people with, to release whatever is going. I find it very helpful.
just put her mic down. What do you have?
So I think just my last question is, do you think all like collectively the experiences you've had, have they sort of shaped your path or I don't know, plowed the path even to you becoming the healer that you are today? Do you think you were meant to have those experiences so that you could help others?
I do. I do. Looking back, when I was 7, I can look back at it and say, I learned how to sit quietly within myself after I died. I was okay being with myself, which sometimes, as you know, the gift is being able to sit in center quietly.
Hmm.
But through the second time, it taught me, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking down doctors, that Western medicine is good, but you have to listen to the patient. You have to listen to your client. You have to be an outstanding listener to help somebody, because things are not always as you think it or as you're trained to perceive it. This goes to an Eastern, Western philosophy of medicine, where sometimes they both work amazingly well together. Um, but keeping that mind and just knowing in your gut, helping people listen. You have to be a listener. Um, and the compassion that was given to me, I have I have the biggest heart for people. I am very compassionate about people and what they go through, why they do bad things. Um, I understand, and I just love. I mean, I genuinely love people. I
And
mean,
that
that
really does come through. Honestly, when you're working with people, that genuine love and compassion completely comes through. We want to thank you today for joining us. You guys, don't worry because we're going to have her on again. She's going to join me with Eye of Soul. I want you guys to tune in Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It'll be my first Eye of Soul radio on Transformation Talk Radio. So you can catch me over there or on Shades of Spirit.
Or on KK. You're everywhere.
I'm on, well,
You're
yeah,
everywhere.
I am. This week I'm on Transformation Talk Radio.
Yes.
But again, Lori, tell everybody your email address, how they can get a hold of you if they want a session with you.
Yes. It's lorrycrow@gmail.com. LORRYCROWE@gmail.com. And if you have any questions, go ahead and email me. I mean, I love to help people. So please feel free.
I love it. Do it, you guys. She is an amazing source of knowledge. Her experiences have taken us to just exploring new ways to connect with spirit as well, validates things for us, what we see on the other side. You can also follow us at shadesofspirit.com or Shades of Spirit LLC on Facebook and Instagram. One more time, thank you, Lori, for joining us today, and we will see you guys all next week at 8 a.m.
Have a great week.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.